Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 29-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things personal injury law related. And up today, we're going to start a three-part series on how to hire a personal injury lawyer. I see people post on Facebook. I have friends that come to me. I hear from other people about needing a personal injury lawyer, whatever that is, right? It happens. People find themselves needing a personal injury lawyer and they don't necessarily know where to start, when they really need one, what it should look like. And so we're going to do this three-part series to break down everything you should be thinking about if you find your situation in an accident, a work injury, whatever that looks like, and you think you may need a personal injury lawyer. Because what's going to probably happen, if you're lucky, you're going to know somebody maybe that had a personal injury lawyer in the past. And when you're reaching out, maybe they're going to recommend that person. And that's always a good start, right? Getting a personal recommendation from somebody that has hired that lawyer and used their services in the past. But is that the only step you should take? Probably not. And you also have to figure out, when exactly do you actually need a personal injury lawyer? Does every claim need a personal injury lawyer? We're going to break that down. And by the end of this series, hopefully you're going to have a really good understanding of just when you should have a lawyer involved, when you don't necessarily need a lawyer involved. And then if you're moving forward with getting a personal injury lawyer, how that unfolds, what you want to know, and just what to expect in that process. What I would say is not every case needs a lawyer, but some absolutely do. And that's the overriding theme of this first episode. So, why do people typically hesitate to reach out to a lawyer? And honestly, not just personal injury lawyers, but lawyers in general. There's a fear of being seen as that person. I hear that a lot in phone calls. People say, I'm not sue happy. I don't want to ruin somebody's life, but I would like to be compensated for what I've gone through. And so there's a real fear there from people of, if they get a lawyer involved, people are going to talk, things like that. And then, of course, there's concern about fees and what am I going to owe this lawyer? How do they get paid? Those concerns obviously play into people's minds. A lot of people just believe that this is something they can handle on their own. Why would you get a lawyer in? Why would you pay a lawyer when we can use the internet? We can figure out what it should look like to get this resolved. And then, of course, somebody may have a prior bad experience, or they may hear horror stories of having lawyers involved, and they're just really nervous about hiring a lawyer and going down that path based on what they're hearing. But we're going to talk about the fact that most people don't avoid lawyers because they're cheap. They avoid them because they're uncertain. And it's that uncertainty that really plays into a lot of people's minds. People are going through a stressful time. They've been hurt. Maybe they're missing work. They're not sure what the future looks like. And then you have these other factors that I just talked about running around there. And so they're just not sure. They're just not sure if it's the right decision to reach out to a personal injury lawyer. Let's just start with, what cases usually don't need a personal injury lawyer involved. If you've got a situation where there's minor injuries, maybe there's clear liability, right? There's no question who caused the accident. You have an understanding that there's plenty of insurance money, and you're interested in a quick settlement, you probably don't need a lawyer. Really, any of those, especially if you really weren't that hurt. You went to urgent care, you got checked out, it's been 2 months, you're fine. It doesn't appear anything more is going to come of it. You don't need a lawyer. We get calls all the time from people with minor injuries, and we tell them, after they've given us the rundown of their situation, we can't benefit you. By the time you got us involved and we did get paid, you wouldn't have any real recovery. So it makes no sense. And so that's the perfect scenario where you don't really need a lawyer. And even though the way personal injury lawyers typically work, we get paid out of settlements, you don't pay us anything up front. Even still, there's really not going to be that benefit that, at least at our law firm, we want to see. We want people feeling like we have provided value to them in this process. And it's a recipe for really disappointment if a lawyer gets involved in a case that shouldn't have a lawyer. And unfortunately, the lawyer you call may not be the lawyer that's going to tell you, I can't benefit you, and could take you down the road. And then again, expectations aren't met. Again, at our law firm, we're very upfront. If we don't believe we can help you, we're going to tell you that. Or you might be calling us for something, some part of the law that we just don't handle, and we're going to tell you that. And if we have a referral source, we know lawyers that do handle those types of cases. We're always happy to get you connected. But what you've got to understand is if a lawyer can't add value, you shouldn't hire one. It's that plain and simple. Because why put everybody through a process and really no benefit materializes from it? Now, on the other hand, where are situations that not hiring a lawyer is a mistake? Serious injuries, commercial vehicles, disputed liability, policy limits issues, recorded statements being requested, or long term medical care needs, lost wages into the future, things like that. That's time when you need to start thinking about getting a personal injury lawyer involved. Again, if you've got serious injuries, that's a number one thinking point on this may be something more than I can just handle on my own. If there's a commercial vehicle involved, such as a semi truck, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, you get the idea. Some business owned vehicle, again, there are vast resources behind those companies, and you alone are not a worthy opponent. I will just say that. You will not come out as the winner in that claim. Disputed liability, if it's a situation where it's not immediately clear that the other person, the other company, whatever that looks like, is 100% at fault, you're probably going to run into an insurance company trying to deny the claim or significantly reduce the claim. And we see those. I have a prime example where we had a person sitting at a stoplight. He had a solid green light. He wanted to turn left. So, under the law, he has to yield to oncoming traffic. As he proceeded to make his turn, here came a car. They collide, and the insurance company denies his claim, saying, you failed to yield. Our guy had the right of way. Luckily, that person reached out to us very early on. We got the data from the other driver's car, and it showed that other driver was traveling 100 miles per hour just before the collision. This was in a 35 mile per hour speed zone. So, how does that change the narrative? Now, our person who made the decision to turn left when he couldn't even see a car, that car came on him so quickly because of his excessive speed. It was all the other driver's fault. And we put all that together for some very serious injuries. So, again, if there's a dispute about who's at fault, that's a good time to be thinking about getting a lawyer involved so they can look at all aspects of the claim. The other thing is policy limits issues. So, if there's an insurance question, if there's not going to be enough insurance, you want to have a personal injury lawyer involved to make sure that lawyer is looking at all possible responsible people, all possible insurance coverages that are available. Was that person that caused the accident, were they working at the time? Is there a company behind them? Were they door dashing? Were they Ubering? I mean, these are questions we run into all the time. And a lot of times, especially in today's gig economy, people are doing side hustles. And so they have an accident, and there's actually a whole nother layer of insurance behind them. Unfortunately, on your own, you may not even think about it. You may be led to their personal insurance policy, and you may never know that there was a much larger sum of insurance money available to you. Recorded statements. If an insurance company is telling you they have to have a recorded statement from you in order to move forward with your claim, that's not true. And you shouldn't be forced into a recorded statement. It is not required under any law. So when we're involved and we're involved early, we're telling our clients, you're not giving any recorded statement. If they want to talk to you, we might allow it in a non-recorded fashion, and we're going to be on the phone as well. But if there's a police report, say in a car accident, and it lays out everything pretty clearly, we're going to say, nope, you don't get a recorded statement. You don't get a non-recorded statement. You don't get to talk to our client. And then finally, again, with serious injuries, if you're going to have a future of medical care that's needed because of your injuries, if you are now out of work for the rest of your life, or you have to take a different job and you suffer an economic loss over the remainder of your life, these are big injuries. These are big damages, and you need a personal injury lawyer on your side to make sure that you're getting the full value, fair compensation for your injuries and your damages. But you have to understand this: insurance companies, they do things differently when their risk increases. When you start adding these things up and there's serious injuries, maybe there's a commercial vehicle, maybe there's a dispute in liability, that insurance company, they're going to put more resources behind denying the claim or diminishing the claim. And if you think you're going to go it alone and you're going to handle that insurance company, you're wrong. It's not going to work out for you. You're going to get the short end of the stick. And so these are the moments where you really have to think about getting a lawyer involved. And remember, earlier is better, because early mistakes can be expensive to your claim, whether that's loss of evidence, whether that's things that you've done. These things can absolutely affect the value of your claim long term. So, when should you call a lawyer? Common thoughts and delays that people experience. They think about, let's just see how this unfolds. Let's see how it goes. I don't want to escalate things. Again, going back to that, I'm not this person. I'm not Sue happy. Maybe I'll call later if I need to. We'll see where this heads. We're just not going to reach out to a lawyer right now. It just seems premature. But again, the problem is evidence fades, statements lock in, leverage is lost quietly. When you don't properly preserve a claim early on, that affects the back end. And again, you're going along, you don't realize things that are happening or not happening that are now going to come back around when you're ready to discuss settlement someday. And so you have to be thinking early on when your situation fits in the more serious category, the things I talked about here a few minutes ago. And remember this: calling early doesn't mean suing early. Just because you talk to a lawyer, just because you hire a lawyer, that doesn't mean you're now walking into a lawsuit. We get claims resolved all the time without a lawsuit. We work claims up with the idea that we very well may be filing a lawsuit. So we get the evidence put together, the medical documentation put together. If we need to have medical reports from doctors, if we need to have economist reports talking about your loss economic impact, whatever that is, we will do that And that could be before a lawsuit's ever filed, and a lawsuit may never be filed. But if for some reason the insurance company doesn't want to pay the fair value of the claim, then we are ready to file a lawsuit, and we will file a lawsuit. And again, the time between hiring a lawyer and a lawsuit and all that goes with that, there's a large time span there usually. And so a call does not mean you're automatically going to find yourself in a lawsuit. Just keep that in mind. So when you do reach out to a lawyer, what should you expect? How should a first conversation feel? And this is a big deal because this is going to be your first time talking with a lawyer, getting a feel for that person. You want to hire a lawyer that you can know and trust. So, this is your opportunity to get some sense of whether you're going to this person, trust them, and get to know them, get a feel for the type of person and the type of lawyer they are. And so, what a conversation should look like, the very first conversation, you shouldn't feel pressured to do anything. It shouldn't be a situation where you're just thinking, I got to get off this phone call because all he wants to do is sign me up as a client and I'm not really getting any answers. And that leads me to the next one. It should be an education focused call. You should be asking questions. You should be getting answers. And you should be getting clear next steps. Once you've laid out the situation to the lawyer, you've asked questions, that lawyer has answered the questions and their thoughts on your case and all that kind of stuff. You should walk away from that phone call with clear next steps. What does it look like going forward from here? And if you hire the lawyer, what does that look like going forward from here? Those are all things that you should have from that very first phone call. And here's the thing, you should get honest pros and cons from the lawyer. If all you hear is sunshine and roses in that call with the lawyer, you might want to be skeptical because the lawyer probably is not doing a full service to you by just talking about everything that can go right for you and that's positive about your claim. Every claim has its potential issues, and you need to understand that because that affects the overall value of the claim and that affects how the lawyer can benefit you. And if a lawyer sits there and just tells you, oh, we're going to get you so much money, that you've got the best case ever, whatever, just look at that with a skeptical eye. Ask them, do you see any potential issues with my claim? Whether it's how the accident happened, whether it's your injuries, maybe you had underlying medical conditions that are tied into your current injuries, whether that's your work status and what it looks like going down the road as to whether you're going to have an economic loss, whatever it is, where are the problems? What is it going to look like when things resolve? What are we going to have to overcome? Those are things you should hear in that very first call. So, as we go away from this episode, again, the big overview is this: you're looking for somebody to be your personal injury lawyer that you can know and trust. And again, not every claim needs a lawyer. That right there is where you need to start because there are lawyers that would be happy to sign you up and probably lead you to disappointment at the end. But a truly seasoned personal injury lawyer that has plenty of work, they're not going to do that. They're going to want to provide value to you. And that's how we operate because we don't want to send people out disappointed. We want clients that appreciate our efforts and they see how we provided value to them. And so, what you have to think about in the meantime, as you're researching personal injury lawyers, look at their Google reviews, right? See what real people, former clients say about the lawyers and the law firm, and you'll get a good feel there. And again, if you get a personal recommendation from somebody, that's awesome. Now go Google them, go see what other people are saying. Just make sure that's a great resource, and make sure you're getting somebody that's local to the area. There are many lawyers that are going to show up. If you start Google searching, you may see somebody right at the top of the page and you click on them and you don't realize their main office is in Florida, South Carolina, Arizona, and somehow they've got a license in Missouri and they're happy to sign you up. Make sure you're dialed in on somebody that's local. And another thing I would caution you about is, how many lawyers does a law firm have? If you go on their website and you see the attorney section, is this some huge operation with 60 lawyers? You're thinking that you're getting this personalized touch. And meanwhile, just by the looks of things, it's a large operation and you very well may just be a number. You're not going to get the personalized attention that you deserve when you have that serious injury. So, again, those are just a few tips as you begin your research to make sure you're really honing in on the right personal injury lawyer for you. So, when you make that first call, you've already got a good heads up, a good start on dialing in for the right lawyer for you. So, on the next episode, we'll talk more about how to actually evaluate lawyers beyond ads and beyond reviews to really dial in on that personal injury lawyer that's right for you. Until the next episode, as always, be safe and be well.